GOG stream without a little tech trouble. No. We're all good to go. Yay. Welcome, everybody. Welcome into the stream. Hey, hey. And there we go. Anyway, welcome, welcome, welcome. I've been looking forward to this all week. Music's, oh, it is. I know. It's going to be dropping down, as you'll see. It's, yeah, better. Oh no, exactly. We're good. Actually, here, why don't I just dive right into this? Let's see here, and there we go. Welcome, everybody. Actually, I'm gonna flip us over right now. And there we go. Hi, welcome, everybody. Welcome to the stream. This is a very, 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 very special day for me, because this is one of my all-time favorite games, which I'm hugely, hugely, hugely satisfied to see it show up on GOG. Finally, it's and we're going to be talking for the next 2 hours with the I guess the project head, the game designer, one of the key figures in the development of this marvelous game that was released in 1999. In amongst all kinds of competitions. So for a lot of people, this game sort of went under the radar, and it never really got, I think, well, I guess the respect that it was due. And now there's an opportunity for people now to check it out. It was also a game that was very, very difficult to get running on modern computers, because it was made for in the Windows XP period, even earlier. Actually, I think it was Windows 98, really. But anyway, this game was overlooked by many people, and I think this is a great opportunity for people to check out one of the most underrated, one of the most underrated games ever, in my opinion. But in any case, I'm here to speak with, again, one of the most important figures in the development of this game, and that's Glen Dahlgren. Welcome, Glen.
Oh, thank you very much. It's great to be here. Yeah, it's an exciting day. Over 20 years ago, we released this game, and it's kind of surprising. People have been playing it for these entire 20 years. There's still a community out there of people interested in the game, and so all you newbies are going to have some big competition once you jump in. And please do jump in. It'll be wonderful to play against some new blood.
Yes. I've on my own private channel, of course, because I couldn't stream it here because it's not available digitally, but I have my own copy of the game, and I've had it since it was released. And I've streamed this thing 3 times on my channel, and every time that I do, inevitably people come in, oh my, I haven't played this in years. But a lot of people are like, there's a Wheel of Time game? I didn't know there was a Wheel of Time game. And it's, what engine is this? Oh, it's the Unreal. Unreal? Wow, this looks great. And so people are very astonished to see this game. That, how did I miss this? But there was so much competition at the time, I guess, that a lot of people just sort of overlooked it. And also the RPG first person sort of combination sort of threw some people for a loop, because they're going in expecting like a Quake style shooter, and suddenly you're casting spells and things, and it's
actually, it's kind of the opposite. The response that I got when I first announced the game was that people were expecting an RPG. And that's not what I gave them. I gave them something that was different. It was definitely a first-person shooter, but it also had a lot of strategy elements.
Right.
But it's not an RPG. You don't have stats. You don't have leveling. You don't have progression. So it was different for its time, but it sort of hit a nice sweet spot with a lot of people.
Oh, totally.
They enjoyed it.
Totally, myself included, of course. And of course, a lot of the things that people criticized the game for, I think it's just the fact that it was so unique, and people were like, again, they had certain expectations, which is very often the case. People have expectations, and then they try something, they say, well, this is not what I expected. But if you forget what you expected and just look at what you're looking at, this is a very innovative title. I think there's a lot of stuff that this game did that was really new, that no other games were really doing.
Well, having a really big name license is a double-edged sword.
Yes.
Because, I had to sort of bring people on board even before the game was launched. A lot of really diehard WoT fans came on, and everybody had their own idea of what a game should be based on Wheel of Time. And of course, it had ranged, from RPGs to, lots of different ideas. But once they sort of understood the respect that we brought as a team to the project, we knew Wheel of Time backwards and forwards. We had the support of the author. We knew we were going to deliver an experience that most people would appreciate, but you're never going to make everybody happy.
No, of course not. Maybe a good place to start is actually to start where you started. Oops. Yeah, sorry. Maybe, excuse me. Maybe with your beginnings and how you got involved with game development and your early years leading into Legend and whatnot.
Wow. Yeah. So that's a while ago.
Yeah.
So I started out actually in my teens writing games for the Tandy color computer, and I'm thinking very few people who are listening right now even remember that computer, but it was one of the first early commercial computers that people could, develop for and play games on. And I started out writing adventure games. I entered a couple contests and did pretty well, and then started writing freelance for companies like Prickly Pear Software, Mark Data, and a bunch of others. And in college, I started my own company called Sundog Systems. And then during those years, I became the premier game software company for the color computer. Kind of paid my way through college. By the end of the color computer's life cycle, I had the inside front cover of the last magazine available for it. It was Rainbow Magazine, but it was a full color. In fact, you can actually see it on the wall back there is an ad in Rainbow Magazine.
Amazing.
And so that became my experience making games for the color computer, became my entry into Legend Entertainment.
Right.
I had actually no idea. I had some great opportunities coming out of computer science, but I didn't like just coding. I really wanted to do other things, which is why I was the only computer science guy in all these high-level theater courses. All these theater people had no idea what to make of me because I was a computer science guy, but I really enjoyed theater. I enjoyed a lot of things that weren't specifically about computer science. And in fact, my final for one of my courses was Kiyum Guide to Be Ninja, which was a game I was making for the color computer. And so anyway, at the end of it, I had these opportunities, but I wrote to every single company that attended the GDC that year. There were only about 50. And so I wrote to all of them. I said, do you have a job for me? And one of them wrote back, and it was Legend Entertainment, and that's who I started working with.
Amazing.
And so I came on as a junior programmer, and I like to identify voids and expand to fill them. And so I started pushing on any place that I could. And then Gateway came around. Gateway we needed more designers, and so we decided to let Mike Verdu decided to let, as a sort of experiment, other people. The
Frederick Pohl game, right? Frederick
Yes,
Pohl
Frederick Pohl's Gateway.
Gateway, yeah.
That was our first, I think it was our first literary license game. And he pulled in a bunch of people and said, do you want to be a designer? Let's see what we can do, under Bob Bates, who was our sort of,
the CEO,
our designer at the time, our in-house designer. And so we did it. And it was a success in that a few of those people became designers. From there, I ended up designing Gateway 2, Homeworld. I actually have a copy of that here. I can show up. Back when games used to have boxes.
Yes. All my boxes are in boxes, but I have lots of boxes, yeah.
Mike Verdu and I designed that game.
Right.
And so and we did that pretty much as we knew that was going to be our last text adventure. Right. We were already moving towards graphic adventures. Right. Magic of Xanth was our first game in that interface.
The Gateway games were still in that sort of part, like graphic, but mainly text, right? Like
so Legend kind of took its roots from Infocom.
Right.
Because a lot of Bob and some of the other people came from making games for Infocom. So we were making text adventures with graphics.
Right.
But then we started making graphic adventures.
Right.
And so Xanth was first there, and then came my first solo project, which was Deathgate.
Amazing game.
I appreciate that. Yeah, I was really proud of that title. And at this point, we were starting to really understand that working with literary licenses was wonderful because it brought with it its own audience, and we were starting to get a reputation for doing good, respectful work, and so authors started wanting to work with us. And so after Deathgate, we actually started a partnership with Random House. They put in an investment into Legend, and that opened up a lot of possibilities for us in terms of licenses. And they handed me a list of licenses and said, a list of authors, and said, which one do you want to work with? And I looked at them and I said, no, I don't want to work with any of these. What I want to work with is Robert Jordan, because I just read the Wheel of Time books and I thought, these are fantastic. I really want to get my hands on that world and those characters. I know what I can do with them. And so we ended up in a bidding war with another company trying to get that license. But we met with Jordan. We talked with him about what we wanted to do. And I think he believed in our company more than the other one, but he didn't believe in adventure games. And even after pitching this wonderful adventure game, he gave us what I call the facts of doom, which pretty much shut us down completely. But I had been playing Doom, and I had been playing Magic the Gathering, and I had this idea in my head of something that sort of combined those two experiences, something that was very visceral and very sort of at the time cutting edge, but more strategic than just shooting people. You know, what I wanted was something that if you played something, you know, enacted an action, it would have a result, because simply making the choice caused something to happen. And if you see a lot of the Ter'angreal, a lot of them seek. So you just have to get someone in your crosshairs, you activate it, and it will follow them. Eventually, it will hit them. And they have a certain amount of time to do something about it, like absorb it or reflect it. And so that becomes a much more strategic experience than just shooting rocket launchers at each other, which was effectively the state of the art of multiplayer back then. And so I pitched that to Jordan, and he loved it. He thought there's money to be made there. It's not an adventure game. There's a possibility of sequels. You know, he was really into it. And so that launched the development of Wheel of Time.
Excellent. Yeah, it's amazing to see how things progress. I mean, when you start out with just a germ of an idea, and eventually it leads where it leads, and you have to make changes in your expectations again, and what you're doing, and what you figure you're going to do. And then once you get started, how do you take such a vast sort of world that's already sort of created, and then figure out how you're going to work that into a game, trying to be as honest and respectful of the original material, and yet turn it into a game, because obviously there's some compromises that have to be made. You know?
Well, that I would say is a really important question for something like an adventure game,
mm-hmm.
because an adventure game it's pure story. You know, there's not really a lot of replayability. Not a lot of dynamics that you can sort of lean on to carry the game experience. It's all story. Right. And so in an adventure game, like when I did Deathgate, you don't want the books to be a hint book for the game. So I ended up actually taking the entire series and distilling it down to a single experience with multiple worlds to explore. But it had the spirit of the original, but not the exact retelling of that story. And people seem to react really well to that. So I figured, hey, I know what I'm doing. I can take Wheel of Time. I can sort of apply the same process. But I started to do that, and then he didn't want me messing with his characters. He didn't want me telling the end of his story. And, more power to him.
Right.
Of course. He had his own story to tell. He didn't want me doing it and, telling everyone how these characters would end up. So we ended up making it a prequel. So everything I knew about that world, by doing all the research that you have to do, I applied to creating this experience inside that world. And he loved that idea too. So, and it gave me a lot more creative freedom, right, to create my own storyline, my own characters. Right. And I think it worked out really well because it supported the dynamics I wanted the game to have.
Elena, I think that's your creation, right? She's the main character, and completely, and I believe the Hound, who is one of the one of the antagonists that you meet up with throughout the game as well. Both of those characters, I think, were developed by you, right?
Yes, that's true. Although the Hound was kind of a nod to Peyton Fane.
Right.
And Elena was kind of my own inside joke because there were so many characters with kind of similar names, going Lane.
Oh yes, right. You obviously you probably had to go over that sort of. Well, this is my idea, and you present it to Robert Jordan, and was he totally like, oh, this is great, sure, yeah, that's a great character, go ahead, it's a good idea.
Well, he didn't like look at every character and every plot. I mean, he got dumps of information that he would look over and let me know if there were issues. But it was mostly when we showed him the game. That's when we went there and we saw his reaction to the game, and he was really impressed. He was especially impressed with the amount of detail that we put into it, because that was what was really important to him. He wanted the world to come alive. And in fact, the first time we booted up the game, he wandered over to one of the ponds and saw the little fireflies over it, and he said, "This is exactly what I was hoping for."
Nice. Yeah, I should say, and I should admit from the outset, and I told you this this yesterday, I haven't read the books. Like, which is really, of course, now I've been playing this game for 20 odd years, but and I think a very important aspect to it is that the game has to be accessible to people who are not familiar with the world. And when I first approached it and I said, okay, here's the Wheel of Time by Robert Jordan. I'm not even sure who that is. Who is Robert Jordan? I didn't know, but it looked like a cool game. It uses the Unreal Engine, and I'm thinking, well, this is interesting. So, and again, I worked in a computer store at the time, so I had I'm ordering games in, and here's one of the new releases that are coming, and I thought, well, this is good, and I picked it up and brought it home, and was been there forever, so anyway, I don't now. That's the other thing too. We'll get to that. I don't have my name on the servers because I generally don't play multiplayer, which is another very important point with the game as well, because and we'll get to that. But I was just going to say that myself entering into this world without any knowledge of it, it's a fascinating world, and if you've never experienced the world, the Wheel of Time books, or now of course the TV series, you can play the game and you get a real taste of the world. And one other thing I'll add, of course, like I say, I've streamed this game on my channel like 3 times anyway, and very often people will come in again. They'll say that they're not, they weren't aware there was a game, and as they're watching, they'll see the differences, and they'll note that, okay, well, it's not like this in the books, and this is different, and actually they don't dress that way. They have this other thing, there's lots of different little details. But one thing I never heard was anybody saying, well, this game, it doesn't even reflect the game. Like, it doesn't reflect the books. It doesn't reflect anything. It's totally different.
I've heard that.
It's different. Yeah, exactly. But it's different. From my understanding, it's different, but it's very respectful at the same time. So you'll find some ways it's different, but not,
I think even the critics have to admit that the game treats the source material with respect.
Right.
I hope so. I mean, there are some diehard people out there who, there's no way I could make a game that would satisfy them. Yeah. But that said, I think people have appreciated the fact that, especially because it's a prequel, it has its own space. It's not canon. You don't have to take it personally with the story that's in there.
How can you do a Lord of the Rings movie without Tom Bombadil? Well, you can, and they did, and it's okay. It's still fine, But you can make changes just for various different reasons, especially since it's a game and not a book. It's not a movie. It's a game, so you have to make certain compromises and allowances to make it work, I imagine.
Yeah, and I think we did a pretty good job.
Yeah.
I mean, we not only had the challenge of making a game based on the Wheel of Time, we had a challenge of making a game like this, like it's nothing like anything we've done before.
Right.
We didn't have the team. We didn't have the artists. We didn't have the level designers. We didn't have the tech people. We had to build the company to build the game.
Right.
And so there was a lot of challenges associated with that. I mean, there was like maybe even a 50-50 chance we never would have been able to get this game out because of all of the disasters that happened with it. Mm-hmm. And you can actually read a lot about this in the behind the scenes story that I have on Mysterium.blog.
Yeah, actually, if you type the host command in the chat there, folks, you'll get a link to numerous different places that you can access some of the materials and work of Glen, and including his books, which we'll get into as well, because he is an author, and in addition to the game designer stuff that he's done. But anyway, Sorry, just wanted to interject there so that people. MooBot is broken. What the heck? Well, it shouldn't be. Oh, maybe MooBot might be. Yeah, MooBot might be out of commission at the moment. He'll be back. Let's see. Yeah, we don't have MooBot. Yeah, MooBot's asleep. That's okay. MooBot will return. Just for your information, because you're probably not as familiar with it. MooBot is a bot that's used everywhere, all throughout Twitch, and basically this is where some of our commands are. So the host command. So, as Tr0ut put, it's she's a broken drunken bot is what she is. Sometimes she's a little useless, but it'll pop up again. Certainly long before the stream is over. But anyway, sorry to interject.
Well, I would direct people to go to mysterium.blog. There are, I like to do postmortems, and because the game development experience is crazy. And I think it was Bob Bates that said, shipping a game is a miracle when, anytime it happens. And so, and there are always new disasters to discover. You can never cover yourself. You never know what's going to happen. But even like, Unreal 2, that was a real fun experience that we had. And by the way, I like behind the scenes of that one was that was a real experience. That was a lot of fun, and a lot of everything else, bringing that game out.
The dance,
but everything.
Yeah, a quick word. If you play through the game right to the end, be sure to stay at the end of the credits. You get a nice little, lovely Easter egg.
Dance party. The
dance party. Yes.
Yes, you do.
So anyway, what was the other thing? This thing was going to ask about. The actual in terms of you come up with the idea for this game, and then of course you have all of this stuff that you have to work out. So you've got to go ahead and it's like, okay, we've got a great idea. This is the game we're going to make, and then suddenly you got to put the pieces together and assemble a team. One of the big things, of course, is and that again, a lot of people when I've streamed this game are surprised to find out, well, this is 1999, and it's the Unreal Engine. I never even heard. I knew the engine, of course, but I never even knew that this game existed, and it uses Unreal and whatnot. How did it come to that? Like, where did you?
Yeah, so we didn't have an engine, and I figured, developing our own engine was not really something I wanted to do. So I had to figure out some technology to use. I tried a bunch of different possibilities. I called every company that had an engine or would potentially had an engine. They were speaking about having an engine, like 3D Realms, and you and I spoke about UVision.
UVision, right. Montezuma's, just a quick aside, there's a game that I've been streaming on my channel lately called Montezuma's Return. And they made this one game with this engine. And I was surprised. I mentioned it to Glenn yesterday, and he says, well, actually, we talked to those people about using their engine, but they're the one company that weren't interested.
No, they didn't give me the time of day. And I couldn't understand it. They're like, they thought they were going to own the world with UVision. I was talking to Quake, I was talking to, or id, I was talking to the big players, and all of them were really respectful. They really were interested in the license. They were interested in the game, interested in working with us, but not them. And I couldn't figure out why, but whatever, they took over the world with Montezuma's Revenge.
That's right. That's right. Hey, I'm still playing it, and probably no one else on Twitch. But anyway.
But in order to get an engine, what we did was we put together these sample shots, these, artist renders of what the game could look like. And I sent them to Mark Rain of Epic. And he looked at them and said, and I'm quoting, "Holy shit, we have to make this game in our engine." And so he set up a meetup with Tim Sweeney. And me and Mike Redu went to his house in his basement, and we looked at one of the original versions of Unreal on his system.
Right.
And he looked at the shots, and it was funny because, Tim's an interesting guy. He's definitely engaged, but while he was talking to us, he was recreating one of our scenes in the engine at the same time. And that was really kind of interesting.
Wow.
So he sent me away. They were excited. They wanted to work with someone who had this sort of vision, something they could do with their technology. And they sent me away with a copy of the engine. And I spent a couple of weeks actually recreating those scenes inside the engine with, and the end result looked almost identical to the artist renderings, which was I was amazed at that, because most of the engines out there couldn't handle anything like that. And we came back into his house, we showed him the stuff that we had done, and he said later, at that moment, he realized that licensing his technology to other people could be a business.
Sure.
And as you know, Unreal is everywhere. They have done some incredible work with tons and tons of different companies. So it's nice to know that I was there, sort of at the genesis of this idea.
Yeah, I think in one way a lot of the original engines were working on functionality. Obviously you want to have an engine where you can do things that you want to make it do, so that you can, from a physical standpoint, and take a world and build it. But one thing that I think Unreal had over everything else was detail and textures, and just the movement, the AI that was involved in how you can manipulate characters and whatnot, and the colors and the like. It seemed like landscapes and outdoor environments just seemed to have much more of a tactile sort of visceralness that the other engines maybe didn't have, which is probably why we still have the Unreal Engine, in
one of the visions that I really wanted for Wheel of Time was I wanted the player to feel like they were stepping into a piece of fantasy fine art.
Right.
And most of the other 3D games out there didn't care so much. They weren't trying to recreate real life environments. They were trying to give you floating platforms. You're right. They were focused on functionality.
Right.
They wanted to create an experience that was about the game and not about the immersive environment, the atmosphere.
Yeah.
Even Unreal,
Mm-hmm.
as soon as Tim saw those pictures, Unreal started to change.
Right.
And he started seeing some, environments that actually, were inspired by real life architecture.
Right.
And I thought that was great. I mean, I thought that's where the industry needed to go.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you see Wheel of Time, that was one of the things that it was noted for when it came out, is, these incredible pieces of architecture and these incredible textures.
Well, even just the second you step off the raft and you're and it just in that one little space by the river, and just walking through that environment and approaching and coming across the castle there.
Shadow logo.
Yeah, exactly. It's like it's a gorgeous game. I had one other.
That was Matt Warsh, by the way. He was entirely responsible for that moment, and it was effective on everyone. It was fantastic.
Absolutely. I know Legend was also involved with the Nepali sequel to the add-on, the expansion disc. Were you involved with that too?
I wasn't. They were doing that at the same time I was doing Wheel of Time.
Right. I was wondering I was just wondering if that was part of we're going to work with this engine. Well, why don't we, at the same time, was it a sort of a simultaneous thing where you're working on Wheel of Time and you thought, well, we need to have some, some practice sort of, or whatever, developing levels or whatever, and we can do the two of it together. I was thinking that.
Not really. They were separate, but Wheel of Time gave Epic the comfort in working with us to give us this add-on.
Right.
And then we use the add-on to increase our experience with the engine, to train up some level designers, to help us eventually with releasing Wheel of Time.
Right.
And I would say that both of those experiences led us into Unreal 2, because Epic appreciated what we had done with both of those projects.
Right. Well, another important thing too is at one point. Now I'm not sure exactly when this happened, but GT Interactive took over Legend, if I believe, right? And I think that happened during the production, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And it was important.
Mm-hmm.
Being an independent developer where you are subject to milestones and getting paid on those milestones was destroying us. We could not keep up with the tech part of it. And so we had to front load everything with art in order to get everybody paid. And that's not what you want to do. You want to make sure your tech is stable and you have a foundation upon which you can build your game. And so once they acquired us, we got rid of those whole payments based on milestones, because we were part of the GT family at that point, and payroll was taken care of.
Right.
So we could focus more on development as development needed to happen, rather than keeping this client fed, which was, I don't think we would have been able to release if we had kept it with that model.
Yes, we all want to be artists and we all want to make great art, but man, money is you know.
Well, art has, it's very, very important. But if you're making it and you don't understand what the technical limitations are,
Right.
you're gonna have to redo it,
Yep.
and that is not useful.
Right, exactly. And learning how to budget your time and how to work with the elements that you have and to see what's going to work ahead of time. That's why I think a lot of people have a sort of their view of the game development process is not as complete as it should be, because they'll make assumptions that, well, this game is delayed or this game has bugs or this is, and they don't appreciate the amount of time and effort that goes into just even just trying to get it out the door. The fact that, like you say, the fact that a game gets out the door is a miracle in itself. But hopefully you've tied up all the bows and got everything done, and you have to plan that months and months and years even in advance to try and work towards that moment.
Well, and also remember, we were an adventure game company. We were
Right.
doing new things, and nobody had ever made a game like this anyway.
Yeah.
And so we're trying to make the technology do things it's not used to doing.
Right.
With which had never released a game. I mean, Unreal, I think the only one that came before us was the Klingon Honor Guard, or
Right.
when
Yeah, that was from Microprose.
the only other, yeah. And so we had a lot of learning to do. We had a lot of development to do that had nothing to do. I mean, if we had just had an off the shelf engine, it still would have been challenging. But the fact that it was growing, I mean, we were helping Unreal grow at the time. We were actually building tools that they ended up using and fixing bugs that we found that they ended up incorporating into the engine.
Yeah.
So it was a really tumultuous time for everybody.
Yeah, I remember actually one from a technical standpoint. I remember one of the issues with the game itself at the time was the DirectX component, the Direct 3D component, which was very iffy and wonky at the time. Even for Unreal, there were so many different patches, and they're still trying to make it, now, of course, the new release of it is taking care of all of that, which is amazing. But just the fact of how new and revolutionary it was. The one thing I always like to talk about as well, in terms of, well, I don't want to get into the whole topic of what's happening today and versus then, but back then I find there was a lot more innovation in many respects, because the way to stand out was to try to do something unique and different, and to take the chance at making something that you have a vision for something and you want to make it happen, but the tools aren't necessarily there, so you have to do all that work. Whereas nowadays, I mean, well, here's the engine. Okay, we've got an engine, and now we'll just make stuff that's sort of like that game that's popular, elsewhere. Whereas at the time, I think that this is one of the things about this game, is that it's really unique. Even today, it is.
Yeah, I think you're right. But I think it's slightly different than that.
Mm-hmm.
I think at the time, sort of larger budget games were willing to make those kind of take those chances,
Right?
Because they weren't so large; those budgets weren't so large that they could like finance a city,
Right.
But so nowadays, when you see these 100, 200, billion or $1 million games,
Right.
Being made, you can't take that kind of risk.
Right.
But what you are seeing is sort of the resurgence of smaller development groups.
Right.
So I think that there's a lot of indie development out there, because the tools are now so powerful
Absolutely.
that even small groups can make an experiment and make some fantastic experiences. So I don't know that it's better or worse now. It's just, the opportunities are still out there to do the kinds of things that we were doing back then.
And I just want to make a little comment here. We'll get into some of what Glen has been doing lately, shortly. If Pyron Jade, if you could do me a favor and keep track of some of the questions that people have there, and then we can turn it over to chat. As a matter of fact, we can even start with that now. Actually, a good thing to talk about is this particular release. And how the whole acquiring the rights, working with Nightdive Studio and whatnot, how that all came about. Especially since I never expected this to happen. Even although when I saw the TV show was happening, I thought, well, this would be a perfect time to have this game.
Yeah, funny how that works.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So I feel exactly the same way you did. I really didn't expect this to happen.
Mhm.
I felt it should,
Yeah.
but I didn't think it would. And it's partially because so a company acquired the rights to most of the Legend games, most of the Atari games, which Atari acquired GT, and so they acquired all of the properties that GT had, which included the Legend stuff. And so they ended up working with a company to release a lot of the Legend products, and some of those are on Good Old Games now.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, Deathgate came out for about a week, and I think that within that week, someone realized they don't have the book license, and so they had to get pulled. I mean, I don't know that, but
Right.
I can't imagine it was any other reason.
Yeah.
And so Deathgate went away, which is a real shame because it's one of the adventure games it is the adventure game I'm most proud of.
Yep.
And you know, a lot of people, my kids have played it 3 times,
mm-hmm.
and not because I asked them to, because they keep coming back and asking to play it again.
It's in my opinion, it's probably one of the best games of that style that that Legend released. You know, going right back to Eric the Unready and the spellcasting games and all that. Deathgate is probably the pinnacle, I think, of that whole style in terms of presenting a story in a very literary, cinematic kind of way with those kinds of resources. It's a really, really exceptional game.
Well, I really appreciate that. I think I had a lot of fun with doing the voice direction and
the music
writing
as well,
all the
right?
dialogue and everything.
You're also involved with a lot of the music through all of the years through the Legend as well, right?
That's true. Actually, in Deathgate, I had one piece, but I wrote a number of pieces for Gateway, Gateway 2, and majority of Eric the Unready.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I really enjoyed it, especially for some reason I can only seem to write like fantasy sort of background music or science fiction, you know, techno kind of stuff. But if it's one of those, I can write it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And actually, on my website, you can hear all of my music. It's on. There's the SoundCloud that has everything, including there's a piece that I wrote for Gateway 2 that someone loved so much that they did a whole reboot of it. They did another version that I find fascinating. So I actually included in there with his permission. But it was wonderful. So yeah, I didn't actually write anything for Wheel of Time, but I did have a vision for what I wanted. It wasn't your traditional fantasy soundtrack. It was something. I actually was listening to a tribute album for Jethro Tull,
right? And
one of the artists on that tribute album was Robert Barry and Leif Sorbay. And so I don't know what caused me to reach out, but I did. I wrote to Robert Barry and said, "Yeah, I know you probably don't know anything about games or have any interest, but I heard what you did. I loved it, and I would love to talk with if this is a possibility." And he wrote back immediately and was really excited about the possibility. And so he and Leif came together again and wrote the majority of the music for Wheel of Time. And it again wasn't what everybody was expecting,
right?
But so many people have reacted so well to it because it's so unique and so there are pieces in there that I still listen to today.
Yep, it's one of my favorite soundtracks in many different respects. And again, we talked about this yesterday as well, but of course, but we didn't talk about it here. One of the comments that I used to get about the soundtrack was the fact that it didn't really fit. This is something, they're listening to this music and it's like, see, this music doesn't seem like it belongs, which is kind of an interesting take. And usually it would happen with somebody who just sort of jumps into the middle of the game, doesn't really know much about the game and whatnot. But suddenly you realize that the music just permeates the entire, it's this sort of Renaissance-y, sort of old Celtic style that I wouldn't necessarily associate with the topic, but for some reason it just permeates the entire game and the entire soundtrack. One of the other things about it as well, of course, is that you're really listening to pre-prepared pieces, so it's not like it necessarily reacts with every moment of what you're doing within the game. It's not like as I've referred to before, it's like the old iMuse system from LucasArts where you round the corner, there's a stormtrooper, the music changes. It's not that kind of a thing, but as a soundtrack and as a background for the game, I think it's tremendous. It's really memorable.
And as we mentioned before, it doesn't react to every action that the player takes, but they were very deliberately composed for the places in the game.
Right, for the
so you listen to the music in the bowels of Shadow Logoth. I mean, that is absolutely made for the bowels of Shadow Logoth.
Right.
And all of the music was scored for the cutscenes as well. And those were very, very specifically scored.
Oh, here's a question. Actually, I just saw here. What's your opinion not putting a character on the box? The ad has a character who is, I think, the lady who's on the poster, I believe, is the one that you see a lot. Was that a decision, or was it just more so that you could lean on the IP?
I have no idea.
Box design was marketing. That's the marketing department.
That absolutely was marketing. Even the lady on the poster.
Right.
That was, I had nothing to do with that. So, if you like it, that's great. If you don't blame me.
I call her the leg lady. I don't know why, just because that's.
She's got a leg showing.
There you go. So that's it. But yeah, what is it? Power can't be given; it's taken. Whatever.
Something like that. And then actually, there was a Kingdom Come reference in the marketing that some people did not react well to, and I'm like, oh, geez, I don't know. They could have avoided that. They did, but they didn't.
Right.
So okay.
Oh, a link. A link. Oh, in the Discord, probably.
Well, you are.
There we go.
I remembered something that I was going to say earlier. I might just jump back to that, and that is about the story, about taking this property and then telling the story that I wanted to tell. I also wanted to mention that a large part of that was, bringing people who were not familiar with the license into the world, and that was that intro. And I was under a rock when it came to those cutscenes, creating the cutscenes that would carry the majority of the burden for the storytelling.
Right.
And I ended up partnering with Blur Studios. That was Tim Miller, who went on to direct Hollywood blockbusters like Deadpool and one of the Terminator movies. But anyway, he and I worked really well to create that intro and a couple of the other cutscenes. I didn't have enough money to get his studio to do everything, but they had a couple of really hungry guys, two young guys. They called themselves Spankhole Studios, and they were working in their same offices, and they did everything. They actually reanimated most of the cutscenes that I had already done that were not good. I'm so glad we didn't ship with those, but we ended up with a fantastic experience that was kind of like, just saved my bacon there at the end with those guys.
Right. That was the other thing as well. If you take the cutscenes out of this game, it's a bunch of levels with action, and it's still an enjoyable experience. But the cutscenes really glue the game together and make and also that's the other thing too. The cutscenes for me do not just are not the story in and of itself, and then you don't really need that. The rest of it is extraneous or whatever. They basically support each other. Without the cutscenes, you're left with just an action game, which is fun. But with the cutscenes, it all has you have a purpose that just permeates the entire game, so that you can they become relevant in telling the story. It's a really good way.
They provide context for the missions, which was really important to me.
Absolutely. Well, it otherwise it's really just another shooter. Which is not necessarily a bad thing to be, but the cutscenes again provide the literary content to make the game have weight, and so that all of your decisions make sense, and you know who the characters are, and you know what you're doing, and there's an objective that it's more than just finding the key to open the door, that sort of thing, which I think is one of the things about that game that I think was different from its time, basically.
Yeah, the game was supposed to tell a story that led you into the multiplayer experience. And we talked about this a little yesterday. The last level, the finale level, is supposed to be a sort of a single player representation of what the multiplayer experience would be, the Citadel experience, which I believe was Wheel of Time's key differentiating feature at the time that we released it. The idea that you could hide your seals, and it became kind of a capture the flag, but it's not just, a flag. It's your hidden treasure, supported by your defenses. The traps you put down, the creatures that you put down to guard it, and then you go into somebody else's citadel and have to deal with what they've done for you. Basically, the way I pitched this at E3 and to publishers was that it was level design for people who aren't level designers.
Right.
You know, I get to create an experience without, you know, having it be player created content. It was player modified content. And at the time, that was very innovative. You know, people weren't doing a whole lot of that.
Right. And actually, and thanks, Pyron. That's working. That's going to work great. And I'll get to some of these questions for sure. I was just reminded of the one thing, talking about the multiplayer component of this game as well. And I mentioned before, I don't play a lot of multiplayer, but I'm one of a small group of people. Well, there's still a lot of great, you know, people who are really interested in single player games and whatnot, like myself. But there's a tremendous amount of people out there now, especially nowadays, with multiplayer. And at the time, I think you were saying that this was originally sort of the idea was maybe making this a multiplayer game, and just drop the whole single player altogether.
Well, no, it wasn't about dropping the single player. It was about the genesis of the idea was a multiplayer game.
Right.
It was having a larger sort of interesting world for the characters to interact in that had a lot of autonomous NPCs, and you know, it was a different kind of game, and it was sort of an extraordinary goal to go after, but in the end, it wasn't realistic. And I realized in doing that, that was about creating an experience, which was kind of the Doom magic experience that I wanted to have. But it wasn't about telling a story, and Legend and our talents are all about telling story. We didn't want to not do that. And so the single player became less of a just sort of introduction to the multiplayer and more about, we really do want to tell this fascinating story inside this fascinating world, you know, because those elements were something that I had a lot of fun constructing something for the player to engage with. And yeah, it would have been a shame if you had a Legend game that didn't have a story in it.
Right. The other thing too that's interesting is that that people might not be aware of is that even up till now, there's been a pretty strong multiplayer like community for this game still.
Yeah, that's amazing. In 20 years after its release, and there's been pretty much no support from anybody to keep them going. It's all been sort of users out there, fans of the game, trying to keep servers running, trying to do fixes, create new maps and things. And I am just amazed that it's still going. And I have a feeling that this release will be really satisfying for them, because it's not easy to get the old version of the game up and running on the new systems.
Right.
There's lots of patches. There's lots of things you have to do to make it work. And now having a one click to get it up and running, that means that the barrier to entry there is non-existent anymore.
Yeah.
And so getting new players and new blood into the multiplayer experience is going to be fantastic.
Exactly.
And all of those people who have stuck around are going to just trash them.
Exactly.
They're gonna we used to, every time Bob Bates used to play multiplayer games with us, we used to call him the DCT, the designated chew toy, because he did not like 3D shooters, and so we'd beat up on him. So everybody's going to be a DCT for a little bit. But for me, like when I first started playing the game after we first released, I was awesome. I was probably the best first player in the world for about 3 weeks. And then I just started getting my butt handed to me. Which is to be expected. And even in Citadel, I stopped playing Citadel because there are some people who got so good at it, I couldn't even keep up. It was almost embarrassing for me to play.
And actually, I was going to say, actually, here's a good question. Well, someone was asking is there any chance possibly now that there might actually be another Wheel of Time game? Is that even remotely possible now?
Absolutely. I mean, I don't know that what that game will be, who will make it, but I have a feeling that there will be development in association with the TV show,
right? Because
it's a viable property. I mean, I don't have any information except the fact that there is a likely to be more development along those lines.
Right. It not necessarily involving yourself or that particular property, like that
I won't say that I wouldn't be involved because you never know.
No, right.
But I don't really, I don't actually know enough to be able to to say anything. So,
right, sure. Well, it's like
I'd have to,
in the beginning, you didn't know you were going to be doing a Wheel of Time game, and then suddenly, and you didn't know you're going to be working with Legend, and you weren't, that's how things work, right? It's like,
sure, absolutely.
I never
I
knew.
will say that I have. So the story of how this sort of relaunch happened was that I was doing an interview about Wheel of Time
Mhm.
on the Dusty Wheel show, and there was someone in the audience who wanted to speak to me after I did the interview, and that was Rick Selvage, and he's an executive producer on the Wheel of Time TV show.
Mhm.
And he let me know that this was in development. This was a while back, and so I started getting really excited about the possibility of being involved in this. And so I ended up getting a couple of people, senior developers who were on the original title, involved with Larry of Nightdive Studios, which was, as you know, an excellent studio that does great work bringing
Amazing stuff.
these titles back to life.
Yeah.
But Mark Pesch and Aaron Levy were excited as well, and those were two of the heavy hitters on the original tech team.
Mhm.
And so it became sort of everybody pulling in the right direction to make this happen. And I really would have loved to have talked about it before now, but they kept us from saying anything.
Right.
But now we get to celebrate its release.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
fantastic.
Well, and I guess in defense of that too, it's sort of nice when it's suddenly, because I'm even up till last night, I'm saying, well, I'm going to be doing a developer interview with a guy, I can't say who, and it's for this game, but I can say what. But but now here it is, and hooray, yeah. And actually, this is like a couple of people were talking about this, and I could link the question. You said this game is a prequel. And so when does it take place? And Lauren Sedai also said, Lauren Sedai, hey, there you go. I wonder if she's a fan of the series. At what point in the series were you in the reading when you started working on the game?
Oh, geez. Well, I had read everything that had been released up until then. I want to say like book 5 at that point, but I can't really remember. It could have been 5 or 6. So yeah, I mean, at the time, especially because so much had not been written, it would have been folly for me to try to give it the Deathgate treatment.
Right.
So I'm really glad we ended up with a prequel rather than a retelling.
So and someone was asking, when does it take place then? It is a prequel, but when would it have taken place in the?
I don't even think that we specify exactly.
Right.
And because people have tried to sort of fit it into the timeline,
right,
about when this person would have been Aes Sedai or the Amyrlin seat.
Right.
And so honestly, I think if I say something, I'm probably going to be wrong. So I'm just not going to say it.
And you also get the impression, well, I don't want to give away, the story, but Elena doesn't necessarily keep it necessarily in the end, right?
She is Aes Sedai for a fairly short time.
Right. So basically, you have an out in the game that gets you into the story and then out so people could ignore it. It's like it's like Rogue One in the Star Wars movies. It's like, okay, it's related, but really it's a totally different thing. And
I actually was thinking that we would have done a sequel to Wheel of Time.
Sure.
And that I could have told her story more, but Legend ended up going away after Unreal 2, which was a real shame.
And then Arena. When did the Atari talks? That was shortly after that too, I guess. The game would, because Atari took over GT, and I think that's where
Atari was the one that released Unreal 2.
Right.
So we were under their label for Unreal 2, and then after that we released Unreal 2 XMP, which was the expanded multiplayer.
Right.
And then they shut down almost all of their domestic development. They just weren't making any more games here.
Yeah. Actually, Pyron Jade has a good question. Do you still have some of the development documents and stuff and materials from the period? Anything
I do. I have like all the original design documents. I think I might actually have posted some of that stuff on Mysterium.blog.
Right.
I think a lot of the concept art and stuff I did.
Right. Oh, by the way, the links are available now. By the way, the Moobot's back up again, so people can check out their.
Yeah, that's great. And anyone who's actually interested in the development history of Wheel of Time should definitely read the behind the scenes.
Do you have the?
It's pretty big, but
Fuse.core just asked, can you show the cool Russian box?
Yeah, I can.
And of course, hey,
Let's
this
see.
I do this all the time. I head off.
Here it is.
Oh, look at
I
that.
actually had 2 of these and ended up selling one to a fan. Let me, if I can even open it up. I don't know if I
Tr0ut
can.
box ice. Yep.
Yeah, inside there's a little slip of paper. It's like a red velvet interior, and it talks about the how these things were made. But if you can see, it's an actual screenshot from the game that was recreated by a painter. And this was the a prize for being the multiplayer game, 1999, from, what was it? Game.exe. Let's see, Game.exe. So yeah, this is pretty cool. Wheel of Time won a fair number of awards in its day,
and nominated for Game of the Year and RPG of the Year, whatever, you know, and so many different things. But still, like I say, it's like I'd had so many people say, I didn't know there was a Wheel of Time game. You know, it just it's amazing.
And I don't know if we covered this, but it was released at the same time as Quake 3 Arena and Unreal Tournament, which pretty much sucked out all the oxygen from the room.
Yeah.
Especially Unreal Tournament, because that was GT's big release, and GT was kind of in trouble, and they didn't have enough money to promote 2 games at the same time. That's why it got acquired by Atari. And so we kind of got swept under the rug a little bit. People didn't. And I'm sure they didn't push us as much as they could have.
And some people who probably tried the beginning of the game, and you're there with this little foot little air gun. It's like, wait a minute, what is this? It's not even a gun. What am I farting on people? What is this? You know. But I mean, this is the thing. I mean, it's like, I think a lot of people had various different expectations of the game, and then when they see it, it's unique and it's different, but not necessarily in the way that people necessarily wanted or expected. So it's sort of like, well, so like you say, the RPG people might have been disappointed because it's more of a first-person shooter, but the first-person shooter people, well, you got these spells and things, you know. And actually, sorry, it just occurred to me here. There was one good. Here we go. Are you familiar with the Arx Fatalis, the game Arx Fatalis that's from Arcane Studios? It's basically sort of an homage to Ultima Underworld, but it's a contemporary one that was made, I think 2002, I think is when it came out. But it had a spell casting system where you draw spells with the mouse, for example. You know, did you consider that kind of a thing, or was it just basically, well, we're going to do, like, again, the first-person shooter style, but we're going to use spells and Ter'angreal incorporated that way? So
as far as that game is concerned, I've heard references to it, comparing it to Wheel of Time, because they have a sort of a spell system, but I've never played it, so I wasn't influenced by that, and I'm not even sure if it came out before or after. But I understand your question, and that is, so for the original adventure game that I was designing, actually I did a fair amount of design work on what that game would have been, the Wheel of Time adventure game. I had a sword form combat system, as well as I was considering a weaving system for their magic, for channeling. So that would have been much different. And because it's sort of a more thoughtful system, it belongs in a game like an adventure game, or maybe an RPG or something like that, because that's not about reflexes. You know, that's not about pulling triggers. You need to have the ability to think about what you're doing and then not make a mistake when you're trying to do it.
Right.
I didn't want that to be part of the process for the experience of the Wheel of Time that we released. What I wanted, and I think I've talked to you about this before, is I wanted the player to make a choice.
Right.
And I wanted that choice to have an effect. It's kind of like playing a magic card. You play that card, and then your opponent can do something to counter that card if they have a card that they can counter. So, you know, I think I mentioned, you know, you play a card, you activate an Ter'angreal, that thing will start floating towards your opponent, and then they can absorb it, they can reflect it, they can do, you know, they can grab the artifact from you. They have all sorts of choices. That's the experience that I wanted to create. And sort of, you know, the window dressing of weaving would have been a nod towards the license, and interesting, but it wouldn't have supported that experience.
Right. Right. Yeah, actually there are several places in the game where it's really strategical. I mean, it's more than just well, grab your most powerful spell and just blast the crap out of stuff. You can't necessarily do that, especially when you're dealing with other casters, so to speak, who can repel your spells or don't react to particular ones that you've been using a lot lately because it's so powerful, and you have to try and either, and sometimes you just have to run away and then try and regroup and figure out how you're going to approach the situation. Which,
watching masters play this game against each other is amazing.
Yeah, because
the strategies can get really interesting.
Yeah.
And fairly in depth. And if your muscle memory has figured out how to use all of the artifacts that you can find within a map, it's a really, really like almost a piece of music or a dance, watching everything interact. So
I think there are about 40 weaves in the game. I think 40. Is that about right?
Yeah, about that.
And I think 10 of them are primarily for multiplayer. I think so. And then but the rest of them are all available within the game, and in a multiplayer experience you would have those as well. The various different.
I'm not sure that we made any that were specifically made for multiplayer. Everything I introduced into the single player at one point or another, even if so like
in the defense of the seals at the end, of course, is where you use a lot of that stuff.
Well, I mean, so you are matched up against people who are using other artifacts inside the game. So you're fighting the Black Aja. You're fighting characters that are using these things. So anything that you can use against other players, you can use against them.
Right.
And so I don't even like the swap artifact. So the swap artifact is supposed to, I'm going to swap places with you, and anything that's tracking me is now going to be tracking you. That was a really powerful multiplayer Ter'angreal, but it's also used as a puzzle inside the game. Exactly. So there's like a little creature on the other side of something you can't get to, and you have to figure out, I need to use swap against him. That's my adventure game puzzle background.
Yes, and I had comments at that particular point in the game, of course, and I had comments while I was playing it because I'd played through it several times, so I knew this is what happened. But I had several people say, I got so stuck here, I thought, I don't know what to do. And then it's like, well...
But it's so perfect. Again, I'm an adventure game designer. I want things to be sort of a little bit of a challenge, but this is an action game, so I didn't want it to be too much of a challenge. So I put the artifact right there, right in front of where you're supposed to use it. All you have to do is pick it up, identify it, and then there you go.
And then just put 2 and 2 together and realize, this is what I want to do, and this is what this does. Boom, bang.
Yeah. And then suddenly, and once you have that, it's all logical. It all makes sense, and then you have exactly that, the aha moment. Which is that's the fun of adventure games, and also games that have any kind of puzzles to them whatsoever.
And I think that's an important point with the game itself, because it's not just a first-person shooter, and it does play like an RPG of sorts, because you do develop. You're not changing your stats and whatnot, but you're developing your character as you get new weapons, so to speak. And they all have different purposes. It's not just getting the bigger gun. Sometimes you have a particular weave that will allow, you can cast fireballs and stuff like that. Okay, fine. But then you have the trade places one, or the teleport one, the shift and stuff like that. And then you realize that you need these to go through the various different elements. It's just such a, I don't know, I could go on about this game forever. Here's a good lead into some other stuff. Did working with all these different worlds inspire you to be an author, or were you already writing, or did you become more direct your talents more towards writing after your game development experience?
So this is an interesting story. I actually, when we were pitching Wheel of Time to various publishers in order to get financing to develop it. One of the publishers that we pitched to was Activision, and we pitched it to them, and they liked the game concept, but they didn't want the license. And so the night before, they told me to come up with a different premise, something that we could just put on top of the game that I had already designed, and that would answer all the questions about the context. And so I did it. I came up with a context that I really liked, and we ended up pitching to Activision. Well, we didn't sell to Activision. We ended up selling to GT. GT wanted the license, thank God, because this really wanted to be a Wheel of Time game. But that premise stayed in my head. And so after we were done with Wheel of Time, I came back to the premise and I examined it. And I said, was there another game here? Is there something else I could do with it? And I realized I didn't want to make a game out of it. It really wanted to be a novel. And so I started writing that novel, and that was Child of Chaos. And it took 20 years to actually, you know, in the little bits of time that I was giving it over the course of the, you know, the next 20 years of game development, I finally finished that. And actually, that would be this book,
right,
The Child of Chaos. And people seem to be reacting really well to it. Actually, won a number of awards, one of which was the reader's favorite gold medal for YA epic fantasy, and a few others. And so I started thinking, yeah, maybe this is something I could do, because I really, really enjoy telling stories, and I really enjoy fantasy. And
That's
so
clear from the game.
Right.
Really?
And so the following year, I actually released a Game of War, which is a prequel to that book, because it answered a bunch of questions I needed to in order to do the next book, which is A House of Prophecy, which will be out this year. And actually, I think I can show the cover to that as well. Yeah. This isn't out yet, and it might be a little bit hard to see, but this is the House of Prophecy, and that'll be out this summer.
Very nice.
So working with established authors like Jordan, and I would say Margaret Weiss, I worked with even closer
For
than Jordan.
Right.
For Deathgate. Yeah. I absolutely, working inside of those worlds, creating storylines inside of established worlds was fantastic and taught me a lot. And just being at Legend, you know, telling stories inside with other people who were very, very talented at that sort of thing taught me a lot. But I've always been excited about creating my own worlds and my own, properties. And that's what I'm doing with the Chronicles of Chaos. And so, if you have any interest in this, I would love to see you at Mysterium.blog. They're available at Amazon, but you can also pick up signed copies from my web store, which is mysteriummerchandise.bigcartel.com, but you'll find a link at Mysterium.blog.
Right on.
So I would love to see you there.
Cool. There's a different question here from Pyron Jade, which is the Chronicles of Chaos. Do you know whether a German release is planned?
Well, the only foreign release I can think of that would be obvious for me would be Italian, because my wife is Italian, and so she could actually translate it. But I don't know how I would approach a German translation at this point. If there's a market for it, I would definitely pursue it.
Right on. Here's another question: is if you had the time to create a mod for the Wheel of Time game, what would you create and why?
I'm not even sure what.
Well, something that you could interject into the game that would give it either different capabilities or other types of weaves and things, or particular scenarios, or things that
I'll tell you the one thing that we tried to do that we were unable to there at the end was AI bots that felt like you were playing against real people, and it was not easy. It did not, we did not end up in a place where we could release them. But I would love to play against bots that really understood the Ter'angreal, really understood strategy, especially in Citadel. That would be fantastic. If you didn't have to, wrangle people up to play Citadel, you could play against bots that were satisfying to play against. So I suppose that would be the thing that I would love to see. Yeah,
that would be awesome. That was one of the things that was key with Unreal Tournament, was that the playing, even like, again, I'm not a big multiplayer person, but the thing is, I could play that game because the bots and the AI and the bots were totally, they could fool you and trick you. The AI was actually quite amazing.
I still play. I play Warzone, and I get my butt handed to me, and then I'll go and play multiplayer Modern Warfare, where I can play against bots, and then I destroy them.
Let's see here. And also, of course, and again, your musical involvement with all of these games throughout the Legend and beyond. Are you still involved with any kind of music production stuff, or you can talk about your involvement with the past games and whatnot?
So yeah, I was very much involved in writing music for Legends games. I haven't written any music in quite a while. Part of that was I had a synthesizer that I was very familiar with. The sequencer, everything was on board, and then I had a flood, and the synthesizer got destroyed, and so I had to replace it. And I never got over the learning curve of creating music on this new one, and so it kind of just fell by the wayside. I had so many other projects that, and it's kind of a shame that I never got back associated with it. Although what I did do, and I don't know if this is sort of in the same vein, but I did start teaching, not music, but I started teaching game design.
Right.
And I've done that for a number of years at UC Berkeley. And so I took students that were a group of international students that were going into college and introducing them to the foundations of game design. And for me, that was really exciting because, I could tell that it was having an impact on them because not many of them understood that game design really could be a career. But when I asked everyone, how many people are considering game design as a career, and maybe one person would put their hand up the first day, and at the end, like half of them did. And so that made me feel really good. Meant I was reaching them. They had a lot of fun with dealing with that topic.
Right on. Yeah. I was going to say one thing that's interesting is like not every musician is a game designer or a coder or a programmer or whatever, but most everybody else is a musician. Like everybody plays something, I think that's the one thing that
is that true? I don't know. I haven't noticed that.
Not necessarily
a lot of creative
composers,
people,
but
right. A lot of creative people end up sort of wandering down that road. And I've even seen coders. Aaron Levy was a fairly accomplished musician. Mm-hmm. So, it's, I think it's just, if you like doing it, you will find a way to do it.
Yeah. Plus, I think it also says something about music that it's not necessarily just, if you are a musician, you also tend to be a somewhat of an analytical type of a person anyway. So if you are involved in, like people who are involved in science or people who are involved in, again, computer technology or whatnot, analytical, they'll have an analytical attitude towards music and whatnot, and recognize they'll be attracted to it as well. Not necessarily the other way around. That's just what would your daily, this is a good question from fuse.core. What would your daily tasks look like during the development of the game?
It really depended on what I was dealing with at the time. I would say,
well, you wore many hats.
And it also depended on the phase of development, because if it was a period when we didn't have everybody in the house in the studio, then I would do a lot of tracking people down, finding out what they're up to, finding what progress they had made. Because originally we didn't even have any level designers. All of our level designers were people who were doing it as a hobby, who were sort of spread out all over the world. And that was a nightmare to try to keep a hold of. And same with our artists. Most of them were off-site. It's only towards the end, even in towards Unreal 2, that we ended up getting a lot of those people in-house. And so we were doing remote work back when remote work wasn't a thing.
Yeah, I don't even think Google was a thing. Like
I don't remember if that's true. I think that's right. I think you're right. It was like Yahoo at the time, maybe.
Yahoo, Happy Puppy.
But I'd say, most of what I did was act as a creative director and also art director. So I was making sure that people understood the vision and communicate that vision. And that took a lot of different forms. Some of that was, just talking people through it. Some of that was a creation of documents, scripts for the cutscenes, actual walkthroughs for levels that people were developing, because level designers, they made the levels, but they didn't understand what it needed to accomplish. Some of them, absolutely brought some incredible creativity to it. Most of them did, but I needed them to understand what inside the structure of the game it needed to do. So I would create all kinds of documents. I would be, getting sketches from the character artists and the architectural artists and the texture artists and all of that, and figuring out how to get it all together. And then working with the engineers they'd be telling me what they can and can't do and trying to figure out, how can we make a game out of that. It was a really stressful time. And so not all of it was easy, but we had some really talented folk too. I mean, I have always been impressed by the level of talent and perseverance of that team.
Right. I'm sure with a project of this sort of scope, you'd have many like 80-hour days, like that basically, just it just constantly absorbs all of your time because there's so much involved.
Yeah, that back then it used to be that most of the people who were involved were effectively kids. I mean, I think I was in my late 20s or 30s at the time, and I think I got married during Wheel of Time, so no kids at the time.
Right.
And most of the people I had were even younger than me.
Yeah.
They were level designers and artists, and they just wanted to be as involved as they possibly could. This was their life. And this was way before sort of, balance of life became sort of a deal. But I would say, I would not put anybody on a death march for a game at this point.
Right.
But it was kind of a shared experience that we all sort of appreciated at the time.
Right. It's a little different nowadays, I think, to a certain degree, and again, that's the money pressure as well. Like you say, with some of the major big AAA titles where there's hundreds of millions of dollars on the line, and they're,
Yeah, it seems to me like that's a different beast, because that's like a corporation telling you have to kill yourself in order to get this flagship title out, where maybe you're making, you're polishing rivets, or you're testing, the rabbit to make sure it does the right thing.
Right.
So how much personal satisfaction are you getting out of your part in that task? Back when the teams were, between 10 and 50 people, everybody's contribution was extremely important.
Right.
So yeah, I think it was a different experience.
Sure, for sure. There's another good question here too. Given that you said that you were on book 5 when you started working on the game, and of course there were like 9 more books and whatnot, it leads to the question: is there anything that you would have changed about the original story? Maybe, some of the later books may have gone in a direction that gave you ideas for how you might have done it differently. But are there things that you would have changed, or things that you would like to have added to the game in and of itself from a story standpoint, or?
That's a tough question, because certainly anything can get better, if I had sort of iterated on it a bunch. But I think the people who are coming at this from the perspective of the most important thing is the license,
right?
Then of course, you could always add more characters or more details or more Easter eggs, or refine the story so that it comports itself better with the license.
Right.
But the thing was, that story that I told set up my multiplayer experience, set up the 4 factions that had to do battle in Citadel the way I had to. So, I absolutely admit that it's kind of a stretch getting the White Cloak commander to use Ter'angreal. Right. That took a little bit of suspension of disbelief, and I totally get that. But the White Cloaks were a faction that I really wanted, because these four characters, these 4 factions, were actually, all of them were opposed to each other. And Jordan did a wonderful job in creating those powers. And so my story explained why those people would be at war in my multiplayer experience.
Right.
And so I could have done more to fulfill someone's desire that I be more like the rest of the books, but I don't know that it would have made the game better.
Right. Game primarily is the objective, to produce but again, to be respectful of the original material. You don't want people to get into this game and say, well, this is nothing like the game or like the books. I don't, and like I say, with the experience that I've had, and again, this is from someone who honestly hasn't read the books and whatnot, because I'm more familiar with the game itself. The people that I've come in contact with who've talked about that very point are are still think that the game is respectful, but they still say, "Wow, this isn't really how it worked," and yeah, this is different, and but they're not all like, it's not a scornful sort of reaction. It's not like saying, "Oh, they messed it all up." It's more like, "Well, this is different, and that's different," but the feel.
There's a real spectrum on people's reactions to the game, because some people, are like you. They haven't read the books, but they appreciate the game for what it is. And then there are people who are very familiar with the books and love the fact that there's a game inside of a license, of property that they really love.
Right.
And if there are areas that sort of, there's friction with the license, they either, they're okay with it, or, they, maybe it bothers them, but they don't let it take away from the experience that they're having.
Right.
And then there are definitely people who think that the game is sacrilege,
right,
and shouldn't exist. And because it doesn't comport with how they see it should sit inside the license.
Right.
And for them, I say, I'm okay.
Yeah, there you go.
Well, what can I do? Sure. If I had been somebody else, the game would be different. Maybe the story would be different. Yeah. Maybe other things would be different. But I think that what we shipped was as good as we could do with what we had to work with. And I'm proud of it. I'm even proud of the story.
Yeah, and you should be. Like, absolutely.
And Jordan was pretty okay with what we ended up with. So right. That's a pretty good badge of honor.
There you go. And then, so the most important people were satisfied. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. I lost my train of thought there. Well, I had another question here. Someone else is, do you still dream of autonomous NPCs? This is from Okris. Or did working on games make your expectations more realistic?
Yeah, I really had, I swear, I don't know what I was dreaming when I first came up with the concept doc, but I was way in the future. I mean, I dreamt of, basically it was going to be VR. I was going to have you speaking to other characters. Your voice would be changed, placed inside the world, and you would be that character. And you'd be speaking with other NPCs that would interact with you as if, intelligently. You would be able to hire some of them to go after some of the PCs that are out there. You could set traps with characters. The thing was going to be really involved. And there's no way I could have made that game. In a million years, I don't think, especially with the technology that we had at the time. But it was so compelling that I got people to believe that we could do it. I got publishers to believe that we could do it. I think that's sort of how I get. If I get really passionate about something, I make you want to come into that world with me. And eventually you'll get a product, and it will ship, and it'll be good, but it won't be that pipe dream. I think Warren Spector actually said something that I find really useful, which is always shoot for the moon, because you're gonna hit Burbank, or you're gonna hit something, but don't shoot for Burbank, because then you're just gonna hit 2 feet in front of you.
Yeah.
So better to cut down than to have to expand up. You want your idea to be so fantastic, but understanding what the core of that is, so that you can compress if you need to. That's what game development's all about.
Right. That's one of the advantages of youth, is that you're too short-sighted to realize that what you're trying to do is impossible, and then you manage to somehow pull it off, and then years later you look back and say, how did I even do that? Why I couldn't do that today? Because it's a different attitude, I think, that you have to have as far as, like you say, you don't just automatically, you come against a wall and you're not thinking, well, there's a wall, I guess I'm going to have to turn around. You say, well, this wall doesn't have to be here,
Yeah, if you look at the challenges that I was up against when I started out Wheel of Time, it's incredible that I would even think that I have a chance of doing that. I'm amazed at myself, my younger self.
Yeah. Well, but again, I mean, that's the same thing today. I mean, I think there are a lot of people out there who would, have that same sort of approach and attitude. They say, well, it doesn't have to be this way. I can do anything. Like with the tools I have today, we can shoot for the moon and maybe make it to the moon. But like you say, I mean, this is the thing. You make that attempt without really worrying about whether or not you can actually get there. Because maybe you can, maybe someone else can help you too, which is the other thing. You didn't make this by yourself, obviously, and you would never admit that, well, I'm the one that was responsible for this game.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah, there's so many other people that are involved that'll help you with your dream, and whatever else.
Well, and again, whenever, I mean, every single person that was on this project made magic,
Mhm.
and without them, we wouldn't have the experience that we had. So, it's one thing to have big dreams, but bringing that into reality, to realizing that vision, making a game is a force of will, but requires the investment and talents of a lot of very important people.
Right, absolutely, and also a lot of fortune, like a lot of luck, and a lot of I've always been a believer that all the talent in the world, there are so many talented people out there, and then there are certain people who actually make a difference, and it's not just talent. I mean, you also have to have the cards line up just right, and it has to be the right time, and all of this sort of thing, in a smaller sense, but it's true too. I mean, I never thought 20 years ago or 23 years ago or whenever it is, playing this game, that I'd be talking to you 20 years later in front of like 150 people on the internet, and whatever, because you don't plan this sort of stuff, but events sort of happen, and then certain opportunities will come up, and if someone says, how did you get to this point where you are? Well, you can outlay the steps, but I think the main focus is the dedication to whatever it is that you're into, and going with what's happening, and then you look back and you think, look at this path I made.
Actually, I'm finding that to be true specifically now, being an indie author.
Mm-hmm.
So, odds are stacked against any indie author coming out and trying to make a name for themselves. And if you're, the world is full of lots of, especially indie fantasy authors, and
Sure,
getting your profile high enough to be noticed is not easy. But I love it too much to not give it the best try I can. And you never know. One thing can change the game.
Yeah.
One thing can get that profile so that people are paying attention. The fact that it's winning awards is actually helping a lot.
Right. Sure.
Because it's not just me saying, hey, maybe you should read this book. It's hey, this huge international competition is saying you should read this book.
Right. The other thing too is it's a different kind of a thing, but it's like, I know I have a musician friend of mine, for example, who well, actually I haven't seen him in years, but he's made a very comfortable living for himself, and he's very big in Japan. And there are a couple of places in Europe he can go, and he can fill like 2,000 seat arenas and whatever, and he's not world renowned, but he's carved out an audience of people who follow everything that they do. And so the whole idea of shoot for the moon, okay, you want to be recognized across the globe, and maybe that's what you want to shoot for. But you can build an audience for whatever it is, at whatever level you're at, and then who knows what's around the corner that will trigger some event that will suddenly kick you into the next level of whatever that. And I think that's the same for anything.
Well, it also depends on what you define success as,
right? Because
I personally, there's a monetary component to everything,
mm-hmm.
but that's not what drives a creator to create.
Right.
What drives me, and I think a lot of people to create, is you just want people to experience what you're creating. And that's one of the reasons why the Wheel of Time relaunch is so awesome. It's because we're going to get a bunch of people who have never seen this game before,
right,
to have fun in this world with these characters and the story, and have the kind of experiences that, I still get people come to my site and tell me about, they met their spouse
mm-hmm.
playing this game.
Yeah.
It's had such an impact on people's lives. It's kind of amazing to me. It's a game I made, back in 1999. And there were so many games made back then, but this one lasted. Yeah. This one, people continued to play. It continued. And the people who are the most diehard fans of the games are the ones that, it had the most impact on.
Right.
And that's really gratifying to know that I had a part in anything like that.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's like the majority of people are completely unaware of this game, but the core people who are love the thing. You know, if they're like me, and this is one of the reasons why I totally jump at the chance of being able to speak with you, and also you know, to demonstrate the game, because I've been playing it all these years, and it's amazing the number of people who aren't aware of it. You know, for whatever reasons and whatnot, and the fact that it all has an opportunity to show up. You know, on GOG now, and so that people can, you have no excuse. You don't have to worry about, well, I can't buy it in a store anymore or whatever. No, now you can buy it, you can download it. And also, by the way, I checked out the version of the game. It can do widescreen resolutions in 4K, and it looked great. Plays really well. It's the cutscenes are exactly how you would imagine them.
That's fantastic.
They work great.
Yeah, that was the thing that they were struggling with for a little while, to get those cutscenes playing correctly. And I'm so glad to hear that they made that happen.
One of the main problems that people had, you could get the game working if you had a copy of the game. You could manage to juggle it and get the game working, but the cutscenes, again, being the fact that they were made in an earlier version of QuickTime, and the resolutions would change and all of that, made it very awkward. And well, I don't know what they use now. Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I'm not sure how they're done, but Nightdive did the remaster of the thing, and opened it up so that now I don't know. You can switch it over to 3DFX and play it using like Nglide and whatnot, but then I think you're limited in terms of the resolutions and whatnot. But if you play it in Direct 3D, which I think it's the standard way it's done, and if you play it in Direct 3D, you can play it in whatever resolution you want, not, you know, like 1080p or whatever, and then the game will automatically adjust for the cutscene, which will still be a lower resolution, of course. It's not going to be high fidelity, but it's good enough to make the well, it works for one thing, you know. And that was one of the biggest problems with getting it going on a modern machine. And all the times that I streamed it in the past, I generally did it on my XP machine. So it was more of a period thing, and it would work fine then. But now anybody can play this game, so which is always gratifying.
You know, I'm really kind of surprised that the whole offense and defense nature of these weapons. I mean, there have been games that kind of sort of did head fakes towards it, but no one has really followed up on that. Yeah. I actually kind of wanted to do a game after Wheel of Time that capitalized more on the offensive and defensive nature of these weapons. You know, it'd be fun to re-experience that at some point.
Are you actually still involved at all in game development at all, or are you primarily focused on your books and writing?
Yeah, right now I'm mostly doing writing my books, but I do freelance for some companies at some point.
Right. And
you know, I remain open to new projects.
Sure. So, since the over the top vision of the world Wheel of Time game involved VR, have you considered making one nowadays? Is that or is that just a?
I would love to. That would be awesome. Yeah, I honestly, one of the things I'd love to do is get it involved in VR work. I did some concept work for a company about a VR game for a pretty big license, but that didn't happen. So, but that's what happens with doing concept work sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I think that's the other aspect of something that we didn't touch on it exactly, but the whole thing of shooting for the moon is that, well, if you shoot for the moon, you miss. Well, you're going to miss, you know, so I don't want to fail. So I'm not going to shoot for the moon. I'll shoot for something I can actually do. But that's the other aspect of it too. Sometimes you do quote fail, or you do not make the, you know, what you wanted, but it still leads to something else or whatever, you know. So the whole thing is just having the gumption to actually take a shot.
Well, you know, it's really interesting. This is kind of a different topic, and that is at Legend, almost every project that we started, we shipped.
Yep.
And I didn't and I was at Legend for 14 years, I want to say. I didn't realize that wasn't sort of the standard. And so after Legend, I got involved with a number of companies, one of which was Perpetual Entertainment. I was the creative director on Star Trek Online. And we did some incredible work there, but then the company folded, and it was like, what the hell? Yeah. It's like all this time and all this emotional investment and all these great assets and everything, and it just goes away. I was not used to that. So that hit me really hard. And then I joined another company and made this really fun, comedic, episodic adventure game called Rat Race. and that didn't ship because the company folded.
Mm.
I'm like, what the hell is going on with all these game companies?
Yeah.
Don't they know how to stay alive and make their games?
Right.
Turns out that Legend was the outlier. Most game companies were just not very stable. Some of the big studios were, but a lot of the other smaller companies just weren't.
Did you have basically a core group of people that were there primarily that were able to focus everything? You would have people come and go, I'm sure, like you would in anything, but you must have had a core group of people that were involved with the company that
At Legend?
Yeah, that gave it a stability that you're talking about.
Yeah. Legend started out with the core group of people that were making those games. It actually was a combination of a military contractor called ASC and Challenge Games, which was Bob Bates. So ASC was Mike Verdu and Challenge was Bob Bates. And they came together and made what they actually was called GameWorks originally, but there was a Broderbund thing called GameWorks, so they had to change the name to Legend. And that became Legend. And that core group pretty much stayed for its existence. And then we added people as we needed to. We added, a lot of really talented. I think if you look at the roster of Legend people, they went on to doing some incredible things in the industry. As we needed more designers, as we needed artists, as we needed, level designers, all of those people ended up, at Valve and EA and I think actually Mike Verdu is now the head of games over at Netflix. I think after going from EA, he went to Zynga. He's been to a number of places, but Legend was a great sort of forge for game development.
Yep. It was an interesting period for those of you who were out there who were, up in our age and whatnot. I don't think it's unreasonable to say that the 90s particularly were a real watershed time for video games, period. It hadn't broken big. It was not as huge as it is now, but it was full of innovative people who were really dedicated to making quality stuff. There are people out there, of course, that are looking to make a buck and whatever, of course, because who doesn't? But
there was plenty of schlock back then too.
Sure, there was. Absolutely, there was. Montezuma's Return, but that's fun schlock though. But anyway, the point is that that there was just so much innovation going on at the time, where I think companies were more willing to take more of a risk to make a stab at making the big money. Whereas nowadays, like you say, when you have a game that costs, hundreds of $1 million to make, they want to guarantee their return. Obviously, it makes sense. And my view was always, well, why don't they take, if they've got this $200 million budget, they could take 20 and make a couple of little, here, you guys take this and see what you can do. It's almost like going to the casino and throwing the dice with a little bit of a bankroll that you want to do.
So there are companies that do that.
Yeah.
And I think the one that comes to mind, who is the company? It's mostly like in the social realm, in the mobile realm. I've seen, and I can't. So the Clash of Clans developer, who was that? Who's the name of
not sure.
That developer?
Can't think of it.
They're huge, and they did exactly what you're talking about. They pretty much made they made incubators where they had teams that would all kind of compete for slots that would actually take what they were developing and turn it into a real game.
Right.
And they did really wonderful work. I mean, they had some huge hits come out of that model. And it's kind of a double-edged sword. It's like you're working on something, and instead of knowing that you're going to be able to make that into a game, you could be cut at any moment.
Right.
Someone could, a higher up come by and say, nope, sorry. But the ability to be able to fail like that gave you more opportunities to try new and different things.
Right.
Because if you fail, it's okay, because failure is absolutely an option.
Right.
Because the ones that don't fail, the ones that latch on to something bigger, those are the ones that are going to become full products. So it's not that people are not willing to make. I would say that the big companies like EA and like the major developers, Valve and what have you, they're not willing to risk a lot.
Yeah.
But then again, I haven't been involved with one of those companies in a long time, so they might have those incubators at this point.
Yeah, I think it's not necessarily a criticism specifically of the industry or anything like that, but I'm just saying I think that back in the day, you sort of had to take a chance, because there were no guaranteed things. Okay, well, this is a big seller and we can make another game like that, but we got to try and stand out. So we need to try and do something different so that, and also this new technology just came out, suddenly there's this 3D FX stuff or there's 3D acceleration, and suddenly sound cards are starting to develop, and there's, and even in the console realm, there's the same sort of thing. There was so much technological development and so many great creative ideas and whatnot. It was a hugely different area,
That was about the same time that CD-ROMs came out.
Exactly.
Imagine having all that space on a CD-ROM to fill.
Yeah,
exactly. That was kind of incredible. And actually, 3D was that was just happening. When we released Wheel of Time.
And maybe,
but I would say actually from then until I don't know, maybe even 10 years ago, there was more of a mid-tier development bunch of companies, and a lot of those just went away. Like Stormfront or Flagship, a lot of those companies just disappeared because they couldn't compete. They weren't the small garage band developers, and they weren't the huge major development studios that could. Telltale is another one that went away.
Although they're back. They're back in another form.
They have the same. In a different form. Different people,
but still
a lot of the same properties. But I mean, I think it fell into that same sort of mid-tier group. Their model was, they knew what they needed to do, and they went after licenses like crazy.
Right.
They were all about licenses. And not so much about innovation. And that ended up kind of biting them.
Sure. There were so many games made on every TV show, every single movie, back in the 80s and early 90s in particular,
And the products were great. I mean, nobody really disputed the quality, but they were losing their audience. And so they just ran into sales numbers.
Right.
And they needed growth because they were venture capital funded.
Right. Well, I should wrap things up here because we do have someone, Dark Saber is going to be, speaking of, Dark Saber is going to be here playing The Secret of Monkey Island, of course, because Ron Gilbert made an announcement that he's doing a sequel. Holy crap. So that's going to be amazing. But the one thing I wanted to say, and I was saying this earlier, but people who've never played this game before, they really should take a look at it, because I really believe that even today there's not much like it in terms of what it achieves and what it achieved at the time. And again, it might have missed certain audiences who were, again, doing the Quake 3 and an Unreal Tournament thing, and it may have missed its target, so to speak, because the target moves all the time. But there's still a core group of people who really believe that it's a unique, brilliant use of the Unreal Engine. It's a beautiful game. It tells a great story. It's got lots of different unique aspects to it. And with this new Nightdive studio release of it, it gives access to a whole new audience who maybe have just entered into the idea of the Wheel of Time through the TV show, say, for example, or people who read the books and didn't realize that this game actually existed because it sort of lingered in limbo and whatnot. But now it's available here on GOG, eventually everywhere, I'm sure, but right now you can get it here on GOG. And the TV show, there's a Wheel of Time TV show. Yeah, I forget who's running it. It's not is it Amazon?
It was Amazon.
Amazon. Yep. Yeah. But anyway, I want to thank you for the time you've given us here to speak about this. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and much more success in your future endeavors, no matter what, would be they literary or even in the game world. Who knows? Wheel of Time 2, might just happen to.
Yeah, I really appreciate you having me on. This has been a fantastic day. I didn't know if we'd ever see the relaunch of Wheel of Time, but we've been hoping. There's a community of people who've been out there crossing our fingers, hoping this would happen. And I hope to see everybody in there. And of course, if anybody wants to check out my works, just go to mysterium.blog and look at my stuff there. There's a lot of behind the scenes of all of my games, or at least a lot of my games, that it's definitely worth looking at all the disasters that happen before you ship a product.
Yep, absolutely. And one other thing I'll add. Now, I was thinking about showing some gameplay here, but when you play through the game, I mean, first of all, you have a big intro cutscene, and then finally you get to, so you sort of want to set up the story, and then finally you get to you could show off the engine and whatnot. But I will be starting a full playthrough of this starting tomorrow night at my usual time, which is like 10 o'clock Eastern, 2 a.m. UTC. So that'll be here tomorrow. So if you want to check out the game, otherwise be sure to check the links and whatnot. There's the whole slot of it's got to be 500 different links that if you want to check out some of Glen's sites that he's available on. Anyway, it's been great to talk to you, and be sure everybody to stick around because Darksaber's going to be up in just a few minutes, and again, he's playing The Secret of Monkey Island, so be sure to stay for that. And once again, thank you very much, Glen.
Thank you.
We'll talk to you soon, and that's it for me. So to everybody, again, be sure to stick around, and we'll talk to you later. Ciao for now.